Hello and welcome to Vitality, Women Leading Audaciously. Today, our honored guest is Heather Ivany. She is a spiritual mentor and aligned with her soul's purpose and mine, I have to admit. And I'm delighted to have you on the show, Heather. How did it come to be that you became a spiritual mentor? Like, what were the steps along your life's path that led you here?
Hmm. Well, thank you first and foremost for inviting me to be a part of your program, Jennifer. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you.
So my path with being a spiritual mentor, it unfolded quite organically. Like many, I started off in the traditional yoga asana realm of teaching yoga classes, but very early on, my classes had a spiritual flavor to them. So I wasn't known I was a physical teacher, but I had that spiritual component to my classes. So there were certain students that would come that would fall away because they wanted more of a physical practice and languaging based on the physical body. And then that created space in that void for people that really wanted to blend both the physical body with the spiritual body to come in. And then gradually, it just over the years, it would unfold into leading trainings that allowed more depth into people's practices. And then it really accelerated when the pandemic hit and studios closed. It gave me this beautiful opportunity to just seize the day and make that step from teaching, 10 to 15 classes a week into offering the quiet moments in that time off to just really redefine and see what it is that I wanted to be doing and how could I make that more of an offering for people to step into.
I love that
Mm.
unfolding organically. I know so many women who are listening are really wanting to make a change or needing to make a change in their careers. And there's just so much we're not in control of, but we want to be in control of because it helps us perhaps, even though ultimately it doesn't. And I just love how you provided that reassurance that it just unfolded organically and you allowed it to unfold organically, because it just seems like when you look back on my life, at least, it's like this divine unfolding of events, and at the time it's not understandable, but when you look back, it's like, oh, that had to happen, so that could happen, that it led to this. So organically is the right way to describe it. Not right, but accurate, resonates.
Yeah, and I love how you're making that point that oftentimes in the moment we can't see the breadcrumbs, and it's only when you're kind of looking over your shoulder several years later that you can sort of see the dots that connected. And that's where, for many of us, it's leaning into that deep layer of trust in self and trust in life and trust in source energy that the next steps are presenting themselves, even if we don't understand what they mean or why they're coming in the form that they do.
So true. So true. It's like I've always been interested in food and making healthy food taste delicious. And I've been kind of obsessed about it for, a few decades. And my parents were interested in it too, more for flavor than for function. And it's like these passions of ours, they lead us somewhere. And to me, like the nutrition piece, like it wasn't going deep enough. And then teaching yoga asana classes wasn't, was I just felt like we were scratching the surface, even though yoga asana is a phenomenal part of the system of yoga. It's like I too had the desire to go deeper. And it sounds like that's what you're doing too. You have a 4-month program where you help women and men align to their soul's purpose. Is that right?
Yeah, so that was kind of contrived over sort of 25 years of being a practitioner of yoga, taking the life experiences that I've had, and then just also offering in the thousands of years of philosophy and ancient yogic wisdom into that whole program. So yes, it's a 4-month long program. We work with intention, so really taking the time to identify what it is that we want, and why do we want it. And for many of us, it's giving ourselves permission to even dream about what it is that we want for ourselves, because we oftentimes shelve that for so long because other things start to become more of a priority. And then we also work with resistance, because resistance inevitably will come up if we're working with transformational change or growth or expansion in any way. There'll be resistance because we're stepping into the unknown and the body doesn't like that. And we lean into boundary work. So, how can we set strong boundaries so that we can stay committed to our focus and consistent with our focus? And then we lean into rest, because I find that that's such an undervalued component of our health and well-being. So really taking the time to identify why rest is important and how to prioritize that. And then from there, we kind of lean into just personalizing as to where the individual wants to lean into next. So for some, it's meditation. For some, it's more manifestation. And for others, it's connecting more with source consciousness through their meditation. So not just the peace and calm that meditation provides, but how to connect more with source energy in that time. So,
Beautiful. Oh,
mhm.
so beautiful. Really resonates with me in terms of the pillars that are required on the path towards transformation. And for those of you who are listening, there is a whole doctrine and grammar of yoga called the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and yoga asana that we have here in the West is really just one little tranche, one little branch on the tree of yoga, so to say. There are many limbs, 8 limbs, and each of those limbs has a whole system inside of itself. And it's a really perfect system, what I would call perhaps the ultimate lifestyle medicine protocol. And it's like a mathematical formula, isn't it, on how to achieve liberation. And Heather is like one of the few people that I've spoken to who know about this. This is pretty exciting.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah, it's really like a mathematical formula on how to achieve freedom in this lifetime. And it's something I study every day, and I have studied every day for over 20 years.
Wow, beautiful.
It
And
is.
what are the pieces that you find are like the non-negotiables for you?
I fixate more or less on chapter 2, Iti Sadhana Padaha, and that chapter for me is really humbling. When I read the other chapters, I find I start getting attached to the fruits of my labor, or the fruits of my efforts, the fruits of my practices, whereas chapter 2 keeps me really focused on the now and the integrity of my intention, and the fortitude of just, really every single day. I mean, for me, non-negotiable is of course my food. That's the cleanliness of diet, like less is more, the increase in prana, in terms of deep breathing and being in the present moment, which is a huge practice for me, something that I continue to deepen into. So there's the pranayama practice, there's the nutritional practice, of course, asana practice, which looks different depending on the weather, the day, the time of month, etc. And sleep. I'm really into sleep. It's almost like my whole day is preparing for a great night's sleep. In connection with nature, and for me, it's about the interactions, and that's something that can be challenging, right? Just to be really aware of what's going on, inside of me in my interactions. And there's definitely some work to do. So it's just constant awareness. Yoga asana is like, it's just like it's yoga is like all day, every day, right? It's not just like 1 hour or 90 minutes, Like, for you, what's non-negotiable?
Well, I think you're hitting on a really nice point there where personally, and I think also in society, we're seeing the same thing where this hour a day of kind of letting the steam off a little bit, letting some of the stress off, and then moving back into the day of busy, it's just not working. It's not, it's not filling the cup anymore. And so when I realized that within myself and started to make different steps to create sort of mini rituals all day long to sort of feel like I was in a steady current of the energy that I wanted to be a part of, that was really important to me. And I also feel like that was sort of what led me into offering a mentorship program for people, was just noticing that the satiation of 1 hour of yoga just wasn't doing it for people anymore. They wanted to have a day that is filled with being a part of something bigger than themselves rather than a moment in the day. And so that's kind of for me what my non-negotiable is. It shifts in the way it looks from day to day, but it's constantly sort of redirecting my attention back into that current. How can I feel more in the current of life rather than watching it or pushing up against it?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. There's so much resistance that I'm aware of in my field, and it's part of that presencing practice in letting that go or integrating it. someone asked, what was it? I don't know. I'm not going to say her name right. Pema Chodron. Is that, how do you know this woman? The Buddhist.
I do know, but I can't, you pronounced it better than I can.
Someone asked her, what is kindness?
Mm.
And she said, it's the warmth of acceptance. It's the experience of warmth through acceptance. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, it made it so clear to me where all the resistance is. It's so interesting. But one of the reasons I moved to where I live is to feel my smallness, amongst the mountains and the massive ocean. And it is so important for me. I don't know why it's so important for me, but it is. That perspective of
I
like,
love that. Like, if I can be so bold, your energy is quite big, your personality is quite big. So for you to be hungry to feel the smallness of you, that's not common. I think most people feel like they're not heard, or that they don't have voice, and so they're trying to figure out how to feel the fullness and the bigness of them. And your whole like essence of how you radiate is just very confident and radiating and able to be in a room and be able to hold your own. And so I love that you're like, I actually needed a mountain to be humbled. I think that's beautiful. I think that's amazing. Good for you. Own that.
thank you. So you're a mom, you're a wife.
Yeah.
You're also, an entrepreneur. And how do you, in your day to day, like how does it look for you to manage your flow and to tap into this current? What are some of the tools and techniques that you use?
Yeah, it's multifaceted. So from the very beginning, my husband has always worked out of town, and we don't live anywhere where we have extended family. So from the very beginning of being a mom, it was up to me to figure out how to get my self-care, because no one else was gonna offer it to me. So that came with just really putting that part of me that wanted to feel guilt or shame for not giving all of my full attention to my children at all times, being able to actually put that on the shelf a little bit and prioritize some self-care. So that sometimes is in the form of obviously yoga practice and meditation. Same as you, it's eating good food and just allowing myself to savor the food that I'm eating, not just eat it while I'm doing other things. And finding those quiet pockets of, maybe it's like, when the kids are really young, it's as simple as being able to close the door when you're using the bathroom. But as they grow older, it's oh, now I get to have a cup of tea that's uninterrupted. And then as they grow older, it's like, oh, I get a whole evening to myself. I mean, that's like going to Maui for a week when you get that, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. And these little pockets that you just start to savor and really find the sacredness and the value in what we would normally think of as mundane moments, and how to make them precious and how to make them almost holy, in a sense, is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
But at the very beginning, it was just that no one else is here to do this for you. And I know how unhappy I am as a mother, and just in the languaging with myself when I'm tired, when I'm impatient, and when I feel like I don't have that time to fill my own cup. So
Mm.
it became as we were talking, a non-negotiable for me. Otherwise, everything I think would have crumbled.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. A lot of the women listening are juggling balls. They're working full time. They're a mom, they are a wife, they're managing the household. So they're really feeling underwater. So thanks for saying that, because it's really, for me too. I raised my kids independently, and it was, I knew that if I didn't pick up the pieces, everything was going to fall apart. And it's like everyone pays at the end of the day if I didn't get my me time. And we're not talking like 4 hours a day, like you're talking, like there were these little moments in between that you had to learn and appreciate and celebrate. Yeah. I don't know how anyone does it without like the acknowledgement of a higher power. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be God, it could be nature, it could be, a religion, whatever it is. I mean, but that holy nature that you were talking about is such a huge part of what fuels me and gives me hope.
Yeah.
But if one of you out there listening doesn't have a higher power and you have tools and techniques, I'd be curious what they are actually, because it's hard for me to relate. I'm such my faith is so strong.
I
Oh,
agree with you. Yeah. I think other things that are little pockets that we can lean into would also be just the release of expectation. So, when you're a new mom and your little one is just so tiny, the only person that can look after that one is a fully qualified, bachelor in nannying or on par or babysitter. And then you get to this point where it's like my self-care is so important that even if I'm in a situation where I can't afford higher childcare, I became very comfortable with getting to know my neighbors and finding a high school student on the street that was just wanting to play with my little one after school for a couple of hours. And that
mhm.
alone was so freeing for me. It didn't break the budget. My expectations weren't as high. And actually my kids had more fun because they were, of the level that they were able to play and hang out with them. So sometimes it's this higher power. And sometimes it's like, what am I tolerating right now? And how can I release some of the things that I'm tolerating?
Oh my gosh, right? I mean, this is a huge topic. Expectations, everything from how much exercise you're doing every day. For there are a lot of type A women in the audience, and our expectations of ourselves. It is unbelievable what we expect. And sometimes, quite frankly, for myself, it's unrealistic.
Yeah, yeah,
Completely unrealistic. And it's like setting ourselves up for failure constantly because our expectations of ourselves is unrealistically high. So it's interesting.
and and when you're living with yourself and you're the only lens that's looking at that, it's really hard to see where you can let go. This is where I love hiring my own teacher and my own mentor, is because they're able to see my blind spots.
Totally.
And I had an amazing teacher that was just like, I can't believe how much you're tolerating, how much you're putting up with in a week that I thought I was doing. I mean, I was doing a good job, but I wasn't even aware of the areas that I could also release in until she pointed it out to me. And that's where I love having a different lens or a different set of eyes on what I'm doing, to just really be able to see those blind spots and pull them to the surface and tease them out a little bit,
It's
right?
essential. It's the way
Mhm.
nature's organized. We need each other to
Yeah.
self-realize. It is absolutely, I think, required when I look at how nature functions. We need each other. It's like an ecosystem of love. It's an ecosystem that helps us thrive. If we can have loving, clear feedback. I mean, because not everyone can see your blind spots, or the blind spots they're seeing are self-serving. But I've had some great teachers too, and I don't know where I'd be without them, to be honest.
Yeah, and same thing where it's when you're looking in hindsight over your shoulder and you're like, wow, because I hired that teacher, I can see that this, and this, and this landed into place for me, right? Or because I had conversation with this particular person, this is why I am where I am today, right? And that's just it's huge.
Allowing.
And for some reason, investing in ourselves is so much more of a challenge than investing in something material.
It's true. It's true. It's a lot about trust, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like it's easier to spend that money on a new car or a different set of skis or a new mountain bike, but to turn around and spend that same amount of money on investing in self, there's a big block I find with
Well,
a lot of people with that.
it's predictable. It's like, that's my bike and that's when I know what it does. But like, it's not even the trust in the other person, it's the trust in themselves to show up
Mhm.
and follow through. I think that's really what I notice more and more now that I've been doing this for so many years. I mean, it's easy to show up and do a yoga class, but to like invest in yourself and like know that this transformation is available to you and that you're going to become this greater version of yourself that's deeper and more aligned. It's for many people, it's kind of, I don't know if terrifying is the right word, but it's also exhilarating. It all depends on how you relate to the unknown. There is a
Yeah,
word
yeah.
for all of us. It's a different word for many
Mhm.
of us. All right. So when you're tired, you're feeling like really low on energy because you've had to do, too many things in any given day. What is your go-to that kind of realigns you, refuels you, resources you?
There's a few things that I like to use. One, I really enjoy yoga nidra. I do love just lying on my bed and putting some headphones on and listening to a guided yoga nidra, because usually my head is quite, even though I'm physically tired or mentally tired, my head is still spinning from all the projects that I've done in that day. So yoga nidra for me just offers this really nice transition of taking the mind from the busy and slowly bringing it into that pratyaharya space of that senses withdrawal and just going into that internal landscape. And it's hands-free, right? I don't have to think about it. I just listen to the audio guide. Um, and that sort of can almost renew me for the evening session of being with my kids and helping them with what they need help with. The other areas that I do, one, it's forced nothingness.
Mm.
So sitting on the couch and looking out the window and not preoccupying myself with even a book, just allowing all the filing and sorting that the mind just needs to do now that things have slowed down, to just have that process. And that's challenging for me because I am a doer. So even with my meditation practice, I'm doing meditation or I'm doing yoga, but the absolute nothingness is more of a challenge for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tricky one. And then I'll sleep. I nap. I'm a napper. So
Nice. I love
I'll have a
it.
little nap after supper. Oh God, yeah, I love it. Yeah.
That's great. No, I really appreciate that. No one's actually ever said those things. And I have to say, I also, as an experienced meditator, gosh, 27 years or so now, I find that when my mind is really busy, that having those audio recordings are so helpful to just harness my mind and kind of clear it out. It's like in 20 minutes, it's like, it just changes my entire landscape. I love how you
Mhm,
mentioned that. I use that too. And I
mhm.
have some of my favorite go-tos, because you have to also be careful what you're inviting in those spaces of guided imagery or guided meditation. But is that what you were referring to?
What do you mean? Is that right for with the yoga
Like
nidra?
like with the audio that that you listen to. You mentioned three things you do as your go-to when you rest. And the first
Yeah.
one is it kind of like a guided
Yeah,
meditation?
it's a guided meditation. So the difference between yoga nidra and meditation is meditation is, first of all, you're usually seated,
Mhm.
and you're at some point in the guided meditation that the audio channel will stop and you get to move into the meditative state, right? There's sort of a silent pause at the end. Whereas yoga nidra, you're lying on your back, and it's a very systematic staircasing of taking your body into a guided relaxation, but the audio channel never disconnects. So
I
as
hear you.
deep
Now
as
I
you go
understand.
into the state of rest,
Yeah.
there's still this audio connection, which means you don't ever fully leave your body the way that you can when you meditate. It's just a different way of connecting to source consciousness.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
done some yoga nidra sessions, but not a ton. So now I really get what you're saying. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, and what I like about it is it'll massage your physical body, right? It goes through the layers of your body. So you lie there and it's called the rotation of consciousness, but it massages your physical body. And then when that's all kind of yummy and delicious, then it goes into your energetic body and it massages and relaxes your energetic body. So it kind of goes through the body to get into the Atman, into that space of the bliss state or the
Yeah,
still point within you. But it goes through the body, whereas sometimes a meditation can kind of I mean, ideally it goes through the body, but it can sometimes go around the body and
true.
just jump into the consciousness space. So it's almost like an energetic shower is how I would describe a yoga nidra, just the way that it massages and relaxes each of the layers of the body.
That's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And I mean, Qigong does similar things too, but you're right. The pathway through is where we are, I think, now as a planet.
Yeah.
I spent so many years trying to go around or above or, underneath. And the only way is to go through.
Hmm.
I'm really clear on that now, but it took its own time for me to, trust that process, understand it well enough, be capable in my own confidence inside of my capacity to be resilient inside of it, and to be able to, navigate the power of it, of going through it, because sometimes it can feel like you're going through a very tall, strong wave.
Oh, totally. That's a great description of it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah. And it's not comfortable. And we're taught to avoid what's not comfortable. So yeah, if there's if it's been a long time since we've been in the body, there can be a lot of tall waves in there that we need to navigate through for sure.
Totally. Heather, I feel like I could talk to you all day. Like I want to sit with you on the mountaintop here and just have a tea. And it's just incredible to meet somebody like yourself who has had a very similar path, come to very similar conclusions. And even in your languaging, I can hear the roots, where they've come from. So it's just such a pleasure. I have to, yeah, like, thank you for being
Oh,
here today.
likewise, likewise. I love how you can take the little nuggets and just lead it into the next direction. It's been a real delight to hang out with you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And there are these hummingbirds, like there's like, they've been circling as we've been speaking behind the camera.
Oh, neat.
To show
Oh, neat.
um, and then any last words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Hmm. Well, just something that I'm playing with right now is having the courage to stay with the consistency to build trust with self.
Yeah, that's huge.
Hmm.
And there's so much freedom that comes from that, isn't it? Like
Mm-hmm.
when we can trust our decisions and we can trust that the wisdom is coming from the true self that's connected to source, that's aligned with our purpose.
And I find like on the days that you're those days that we all have where you're like, is this working or what's the point, or those doubtful days, that for some reason just staying consistent brings me through that mini storm and just fills me with more trust in self, like trust in life, trust in self. It's magical. I don't know what it is about consistency, but for me it's a real support tool. Yeah.
For me too, I find that consistency, I think, is a much kinder word than discipline. It's much softer and more tender.
Yeah, it blends a little bit of that masculine discipline with sort of the feminine self-love.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not, but I find there's so much freedom inside of that, not in the sense of dogma, but in the sense of just like that commitment and the follow through.
Hmm.
And then then like this whole other layer of nectar starts to emerge. And it's just incredible. It's just
You're bringing the
incredible.
hummingbirds in. You're bringing those hummingbirds in. I love it.
How did you know? It was right there. Um, well, if our listeners want to learn more about your work, your 4-month program, they should go to your website. Can you please spell it out for them?
Yeah, sure. It's heatherivany.com. So HEATHER as in Victor ANY.com. And on my homepage there, I have a free course that you can click on. It's called the Spiritual Reset. And so it's a beautiful 7-day journey that just helps bring the individual from the distraction of the periphery and into the midline. So that's an easy way to just experience a little bit more of me without any strings being attached to that at all.
Beautiful. I love it. We'll also include that in the show notes. And just so delighted to meet you today and to be with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Well, before we go, I just wanted to mention something that I'm really excited about. There is a intensive retreat in November. Tell us more about that, Heather.
Yeah, so that is falls on the 19th of November of this year. And that's mostly designed for individuals that we meet so much over Zoom, but you just can't replace in-person contact. So it is a yoga retreat, but it is also a soul retreat. So we spend some time in nature and harmonizing with nature. We spend time in the Akashic Records, which is basically a radio station that you can dial into in a meditation field. And I have a human design practitioner coming along with me as well. And so she's going to take us into some amazing group conversations in the evenings. And so mostly it's just how do we fill our cup with nature and good food and good company and human contact and touch. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. That'll take place at the end of the year. Yeah.
So exciting. And who's kind of the ideal person to join
would say anyone who is hungry for going deep, like who really wants to, it's not a yoga and surf retreat. It's designed to each day sort of takes us a little bit deeper without going so deep that we're going into like opening up old wounds and trauma or anything like that, but really just being able to access the authenticity of one's soul. And
Mm,
how do we bring that more to the surface and lead when we leave the retreat? How do we lead from that space?
beautiful. I love that. I think we all need that right now, and we're craving it.
Yeah. So lots of time to prepare for it and make decisions about it. But we wanted to just get the word out early for those people that do plan in advance. But we're fully aware that a lot of people are making decisions closer to the time and the date just because everything's unpredictable right now, right?
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
again, commitment and carving out time for ourselves is key. So thank you again for being here. So excited about your event, about your program, and about meeting you.
Thanks so much for having me, Jennifer. It's been a pleasure.